One argument that always gets brought up, and I notice in threads and even in the comment section here on YouTube, when people debate um, the influence of Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Will Chamberlain, Michael Jordan, Bill Russell, and other players, is exactly what happened when these players, these phenomenally gifted individual players, were removed from their teams. And one of the things that some people seem to try to do to diminish Michael Jordan's influence is to say, well, look what happened when Jordan stepped away from the Bulls in 1993. They only dropped by 2 wins. Look what happened when Bird retired in 92 or when Magic left in 91. Their teams dropped 12 and probably 15 games. And look what happened when Bill Russell left. The team probably dropped like 10 losses or perhaps something like that. And they try to diminish the influence that Michael Jordan has had. And I've even seen people like Oscar Robertson use that as a sort of a barometer to say that Michael Jordan was or is overrated. And I never quite understood why Oscar Robertson was so hard on Jordan. That's another thing. And I think that, you really have to look at what really went on at that time period. I think what people don't understand is there's a lot of key differences with those teams and this team at that time. For instance, if you look at the Boston Celtics during 1992 going to 1993, and you look at the Lakers, don't get me wrong, I respect those coaches, but I think in order to win in the NBA, you need three things. You need great coaching, you need great rebounding, and you need great defense. The Miami Heat are an exception to the rule when it comes to rebounding. They've generally been a very poor rebounding team statistically. What helps them is the fact that they're an extremely accurate team as far as shooting the basketball. That'll help you win a lot of basketball games, even if you're getting out rebounded, converting field goals. If you have a guy like Bosh shooting 52%, if you have your big three all shooting well over 50%, then you have a good chance of winning basketball games. But because they struggle on the rebounding side, that's why they sometimes lose to teams that have great rebounding. But like I said, if you have a guy like Bosh shooting 52%, Wade shooting 54%, LeBron shooting 59% from the field, you're going to win a lot of basketball games, even if you are a poor rebounding team. But anyway, you have to look at the fact that the Chicago Bulls in 1993, when Michael Jordan retired, everyone thought this team was just going to completely flatline that year in 1993, 1994. I remember like yesterday, I believe it was October 6, 1993, when he announced he was going to retire. That didn't happen. It didn't happen. And the reason why it didn't happen was because there were a couple of things. Phil Jackson won the Coach of the Year award in 1995-96 for the Bulls, went 72-10. But you could make a great case that he should have won it that year. Phil Jackson proved why, in my opinion, at least, he's one of the two greatest coaches the NBA has ever seen. He, along with Red Auerbach, are the two greatest coaches. Although some people consider Phil Jackson the greatest coach of all time, I tend to give the nod to Red Auerbach. Although he trails Jackson with 9 NBA titles as a head coach, the things that he did as far as putting those teams together in the 60s, and the things he did also as an executive, although it's a different role, I tend to look at Red Auerbach as the greatest architect we've ever seen as far as NBA. But anyway, Phil Jackson to be the top 2 coach of all time, you can't forget that. You cannot forget that he was. He saw the deficiencies that was going to happen with Michael Jordan, the greatest player ever play the game gone. You have to compensate for that. And they did that. Also, you have Tex Winter. He was still there. So a lot of the keys, a lot of the essential pieces of the championship team were there. And also, it has to be noted that last championship year in 1992-93, the Bulls were starting to slip a little bit. Some of the key pieces were starting to get older. John Paxson was getting older. He had lost his starting position to B.J. Armstrong. Bill Cartwright was slipping and sliding as a player. Some of the other key pieces that had added on were older players. I believe Darrell Walker was on that team. Trent Tucker. The Bulls, the first two championship teams, averaged about 110 points per game. In 1992-93, that slipped to 105 points per game. Michael Jordan also increased his offensive load from 31 points to 30 points, all the way up to nearly 33 points a game that last year. So he had to carry more of an offensive burden that year. And what the Bulls did is their pace slowed down a little bit that year, the 1993-94 season. They went from 105 points per game to 98 points per game. The offense wasn't what it once was, but they had some key additions that came on that will be part of the championship nucleus from the late 90s. Luke Longley arrived to that team. I think the biggest arrival from a person that had actually been signed in 1990, Tony Kukoc finally was cleared to join the Chicago Bulls. And I think that's key, and that's forgotten, that Tony Kukoc was on that team. Steve Kerr came onto that team. Bill Wennington came onto that team. So you have some of these guys who were part of that championship nucleus arriving that were young and in their primes. They weren't great individual basketball players, but they were young. There were no egos amongst those nucleus. Probably the only ego you really had there at that time was Horace Grant, and he left a year later on. I know Pippen had that infamous flare-up in that playoff game, but generally Pippen was a team player. Also, you have to look at the fact that I spoke upon the players defensively. The Bulls averaged only 98 points per game, but they only gave up 94 points per game, which is better than what they did the year before when they gave up 98 points per game. That was a 4-point differential, and that caused them to win a lot of close ball games, a lot of their defense, winning key turnover battles. That probably gave them an extra maybe 10 wins. Also, rebounding. Rebounding is forgotten. The fact that Horace Grant was still with the team is forgotten. Rebounding generally is essential to winning championships. Like I said, the Miami Heat are a bit of an exception to the rule, and that's why sometimes Miami Heat do struggle. That's why they struggle against a team like the Indiana Pacers, who was pretty good at rebounding as a team. And that might be the downfall of the Miami Heat this year, coming up. If they don't, I think that's going to eventually catch up with this team. The fact that they're such a poor rebounding team overall. But Horace Grant was still with the team. He was still young at an all-star level. And he was one of the key reasons why, when he left to sign with the Orlando Magic, why they really truly struggled at 94-95, because when you don't have rebounding and you don't have a consistent offensive rebounder to give your team extra possessions, you're going to struggle. But I think the number one reason why that team performed the way they did was Scottie Pippen. Scottie Pippen may have had his best overall season in 1993-94. He was third in the MVP voting that year, behind Akeem Olajuwon and David Robinson. And although those two players had superior individual numbers than Scottie Pippen, and they were better players, Scottie Pippen, if you look at the true sense of what a most valuable player to his team, it was Scottie Pippen. I think he had a stretch during that season. Might have been a 2-week stretch or something like that, where he averaged 22 points, 9 rebounds, 7 assists, 4 steals, shooting like 50% from the field, 40% from 3, 75% from the free throw line. I mean, he was really playing excellent ball that year. And Scottie's never going to be a guy who's going to hoist up 30 shots a game. That just wasn't his game. But what he did, he was phenomenal. People always try to use Scottie Pippen as a derogatory term for players. But Scottie Pippen is a top 50 all-time player. In my book, he's a top 40 all-time player. And that's one of the reasons why that Chicago Bulls team won 55 games that year. They played hard. They played really great all-around basketball. They won some games they probably shouldn't have even won. And I even dare say that they probably should have won even more games than they did had Scottie Pippen not missed some of the games beginning of this season. And the Bulls dropped some, I think they dropped what? Didn't they drop like the last 2 or 3 games of that season? So that might have been the finest coaching performance ever by Phil Jackson. Scottie Pippen was at the peak of his powers at the year that he really moved from being in Michael Jordan's shadow to being a star in his own right. You remember before in the first three-peat, Scottie Pippen was seen as under Michael Jordan's shadow. After the second three-peat, they were more or less equal co-stars. Although Michael had first billing, Scottie was still right there. And Michael Jordan knew that he needed Scottie Pippen more when he was older. He realized how essential Scottie Pippen was. And all those people who dissed Scottie Pippen, you saw what Scottie Pippen value was to their team during 1997-98 season when he missed, I believe it was 35 games. And the Bulls struggled. And Michael Jordan did individually struggle without Scottie Pippen's presence. Michael Jordan had to carry and assume a responsibility as far as ball handling that he did not have to do probably since 1993. When he came back, Michael's role was more just to score. Pippen was just more or less the distributor. Contrary to public opinion, people say that Michael Jordan was a ball hog. During the second three-peat, Scottie Pippen handled the ball more than Michael Jordan, if you actually watch the games. Jordan's thing was he just pretty much wanted to get into a position to score. Michael Jordan was quick, efficient scorer. That's what he was. He wasn't one of these guys that just hold to the basketball for 20 seconds and shoot. But anyway, this is the reason why I think that 1993-94 Chicago Bulls team won 55 games that year and almost beat the New York Knicks in the playoffs. You guys can talk about that call, but that's what I think. I may not agree with that, but that's what I feel. Thanks for listening.